Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Molly Murrah, and I'm your host for the Northwest Watercolor Society general meetings that we have 8 times a year. Um, I need to beg a little bit of understanding tonight in case I all of a sudden just start coughing. I'm recovering from COVID, and it's been a slow slug along this path, I must tell you. So be careful out there, everybody. It's a very virulent strain and seems to be on the rise. So tonight we have a wonderful, wonderful meeting for you. I can't wait to see Stan Kurth's demo because I can't wait to take his workshop, which is coming up next month. But first, I just want to make a few introductions. One of them is Peggy Myers, who is our chat room monitor, and she is going to be monitoring the chat throughout. Peggy, say a few more words so that people can see you on the screen.
Here, yeah.
Yep, there she is. And Peggy does a wonderful job. I don't know what I'd do without her.
Thank you.
And then I'm going to introduce a few more people who are crucial to Northwest Watercolor Society. And the first one is going to be Linda Hultz. And Linda is going to tell us about Samish Paint Out and also about the AZR, the Artist Zoom Room. Sorry, it's Artist Zoom Room now. Okay, Linda, thank you.
Thank you, Molly. Hello, all. I've just returned from a week up at Paint Out, where wonderful art was created, lots of delicious food was served, and some pretty amazing artists gathered from all across the Northwest for a week of community and art. Such talent and such kind souls. Perhaps you can join us this coming February. You'll see more information on our website being posted shortly. As most of you know, the AZR team was on summer break. We have come up with a plan to provide more insight into how to paint a better painting. So this coming October 9th at 12:45, we will kick off this year-long program to provide you guest speakers, and this particular leading off process is going to have Anita Lehman. Her understanding of the underlying structure of an excellent painting made her our first choice to start this year off. Remember to log on to www.org, go to the AZR page and sign up for the October critique. We are looking for a couple more artists to finish this program off for the month. So I hope to see you then. Back to you, Molly.
All right. Thank you, Linda. Hold on one second. All right. Now I'd like to introduce Debbie Roskoff, who is our acting president of Northwest Watercolor Society, and she has a few things she's going to talk to you about as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Debbie Roskoff, and I am the acting president of NWWS. This is September. This is always our welcome back month after the long summer break. So it's really terrific to almost see everybody. And we always like to do something kind of special in September, and having the very, very unique talents of Stan Kurth is a great way to do it. But you know, I'm just looking at the chat here and seeing so many people from so many different time zones is really gratifying for all of us that do the work that brings this meeting and meetings and events like this to you, because we don't get to see you like we used to. So the fact that you all show up here is truly gratifying. So thanks for being here. We hear constantly from people across the country that they love having our meetings online and then the recording. So happy to see you tonight. I want to talk to you tonight two things briefly. First of all, I want to talk to you about our officer elections. And then I want to tell you a little bit about our open exhibition, give you a little bit of an update. As you know, we yearly have our executive committee elections. And this year, at the end of the summer, thank you to everyone who voted for those 5 executive positions. That allows us to keep moving forward and working smoothly with the board. So as a result of those elections, I'll continue as your acting president. Molly Murrah will continue as the acting vice president. Shirley Jordan, who's been our treasurer for several years, will continue to be treasurer. Peggy Willett will continue to be our recording secretary, and we're able to welcome a new corresponding secretary now, and her name is Connie Spahn. She has an incredible skill set and background, and she's going to be just a great addition to the board of directors. So thanks to everybody that did vote. Doesn't take long, but it's important for us to get that done each year. And I'm going to note the word acting that's involved in those elections. I'll continue to be the acting president as Molly, and Molly is the acting vice president. But what are we doing in the absence of a true president? Well, to make a long story short, as they say, a few months ago, we decided to take another look at the way our organization is structured at the board level. So we stood way back and we kind of redesigned it. We've come up with something that is not the traditional hierarchy that we're all used to it. We designed something that's more modern and have spread responsibility for decision making to 6 different groups. So those groups with like responsibilities have more autonomy. They can come up with solutions and then bring those to the larger board of directors. Don't think you've noticed anything. We really haven't had any hiccups. We're all we're relearning, we're unlearning, and we're learning, but it's going very, very smoothly. That doesn't mean we don't want a president. If there's anyone out there that is so inclined to speak with us about being president or vice president, we'd love to talk to you. But part of this restructuring, part of the objective of the restructuring was to take some of the burden from the president. So our emphasis for the presidency is someone that's got great vision, someone that has really good communication skills, someone that is very inspirational and really important as we move forward with the more sophisticated financial management system. We want someone that is going to be very, very skilled that way. So we'd like the next president to spend less on the day-to-day and more on very, very presidential things. So we'd love to talk to you, like if you'd like to talk to us. As for the open, well, we're just about 3 weeks away, not quite 3 weeks away from the day that our International Open Exhibition opens. It will be, as you may already know, on Camano Island in Washington State. Camano Island is just about an hour's drive north of Seattle. And if you haven't been there yet, it's one of the loveliest areas in the state. So either when you would like to come see the exhibition or if you'd like to come up for the awards reception, it's a great time to plan to stay for a night or two and just make a weekend out of it. Our exhibition opens on the 14th and the awards reception is on the 28th. So there's some time in between those two. But we are so excited because this is the first in-gallery exhibition we've had in 4 years. You all well know that we all thoroughly enjoy looking at beautiful artwork online, but you also know that when you see a gorgeous watercolor painting in person, it's a unique and different experience. So that's what we have for you this year. You can get real close to the paintings, you can see the texture, you can see the transparency, and just see all of the nuances that make that painting terrific. So I hope everyone will be able to get up there and see that. Now, on our event page on the website, if you go to the website and you go to the open exhibition page, click on the right-hand side for the specific open exhibition event page. And on that page, you'll find a link to the Matsky Gallery website. So you can learn more about the gallery and the sculpture garden. It's really a beautiful, beautiful gallery. There's also a link there for the gallery hours because they may change. She's primarily open on the weekends. We don't want you to miss seeing this exhibition. And thirdly, I linked something linked a page that is actually from the Matsky Gallery website, and it tells you about the location of the gallery, and it also has a list, because the owner of the gallery has done some research. So there's a list there of accommodations in the area. If you'd like to go up and stay all night, then that's going to give you a jump on some good accommodations. But the reception would be on the 28th. It's going to be at 2:30 in the afternoon, from 2:30 to 5. Stan Kurth, our juror, will be there. I'll be driving him there, and he'll be with me. There's no night driving involved unless you want to stay all night. So you can get up there in the afternoon and get back home before the sun goes down. So any questions? I think I've answered most of them on the website. And again, welcome everybody. This is going to be a great demo tonight. Okay.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Debbie. Great. That was wonderful. And now I'd like to introduce Karen Robinette, who is our incredibly organized, hardworking workshops chair. And Karen is going to talk a little bit about Stan's workshop coming up next month.
Okay. Do you want to learn to be a better painter? The answer is we all do. The question is how? Stan Kurth, our demo artist, will be teaching a 4-day in-person workshop from October 23rd to 26th at Artworks in Edmonds, Washington. He will teach us how to paint intuitively by implementing the elements and principles of design. Regardless of your style of painting, learning to look at your composition in terms of design, value, and color relationships will help you improve your approach. Please consider taking this workshop. The information is on the Northwest Watercolor Society website. Thank you.
Great, Karen. Thank you. And I have one more workshop to talk about. That is our Northwest Watercolor Society Workshops International. Our next workshop will be on November 11th. It's a Saturday. And the artist is a Daniel Smith brand ambassador named George Politis. And we have John Cogley with us here tonight. And this whole program started as a result of a conversation between myself and Catherine Taylor, who is John's cohort at Daniel Smith. And the notion of introducing international artists to our members came up, and this was our way of solving that problem, because there's so many wonderful artists out there who the rest of the world doesn't know very much about, and George Politis might be one of them. He's a master of teaching how to paint textures and various patterns and things like that in watercolor. And I think you're just really going to enjoy the workshop. It's $50. It's a 3-hour workshop on a Saturday. And our next one is on November the 11th. Okay. So that brings up John Cogley. John, are you here?
I am here.
You are here. Good. Okay. John is the CEO and owner of Daniel Smith, and he's going to give us a little presentation tonight. He's also our longest standing Platinum Plus sponsor for Northwest Watercolor Society. So stage is yours, John.
Thank you so much. George is a wonderful, wonderful artist, by the way. He's great to watch him work. Today, I'd like to talk about two things. One, continuity of color, because I'm asked this question a lot in Daniel Smith customer service. And for example, quinacridone gold ran out probably about 17 years ago now. And we finally ran out about 3 years ago. And we were able to have quite a large quantity, because we buy everything in large quantities to make sure we have continuity of color, where from tube to tube, the color is the same. The same thing is happening now with the quinacridone burnt orange. That was ended 2 years ago. We have about 18 years worth. Alizarin crimson has also been put on the block. So companies, as they start to buy one another up, they just pare down their lines. And because as artists, we're kind of way below the car companies, for example, a lot of those colors go by the wayside. So to make sure that we have color, we buy decades worth at a time just to have continuity of color. The other one is just, we're bringing out 74 total new and existing gouache. We have 24 right now, 22 right now. We're going to have a total of 74. So those will be out in November. I think they're going to be a wonderful addition to your palette if you happen to use gouache. It's a phenomenal water media. I think you would probably enjoy it. And then lastly, if you have 1 or 2 questions for me, I'd love to answer your questions. I learned so much by listening to artists' questions. So if there's anything you ever wanted to ask and you'd like to ask, I'd certainly like to hear it.
We've got a question. Is Quinn burnt orange also running out
Yes, it's
in
already.
acrylic paint?
No,
In acrylic paint too?
I don't know about acrylic, but unless the company, whoever that is who makes acrylics, bought a supply, it will run out because it's no longer being made. It was stopped 2 years ago.
Okay, and Jane wants to know, are you saying that Quinn Gold and alizarin crimson are being discontinued?
Some companies are discontinuing the alizarin crimson. Quinn Gold has been discontinued for almost 2 decades now. And the burnt orange has been 2 years ago, they stopped making it.
Okay, and Edward was asking if the Seattle store is still open, and no, that has been
No.
closed for 3 years.
Yeah.
And can you paint, Susan wants to know, can you paint gouache on acrylic?
You can, so can you paint it on top of acrylic?
Right.
And yes, you should be able to do that because it's more of a mass tone type of water media, although you can certainly wet it down. So yes, you could.
Okay, and are all Quins in trouble or just some?
You know, I think as time goes on, just because we as consumers are fickle about what colors we like, right? Big corporations will stop making certain colors. So I would say, yeah, probably Quins, because you can for the automobile industry, et cetera, for industry, you can get colors which are suitable in place of the Quins, but for artistic purposes, very few things are comparable to quinacridones. They're just so absolutely gorgeous.
And
That's
Liz,
very disturbing, John. That's very, very disturbing that we're losing the Quins. They're my favorite colors.
Yeah, we've lost 2, but I think it'll take some years for the other ones to go away. And we will always have huge supplies of it because we make sure that we have a running 1.5 decades to 2 decades worth of pigment.
Liz is asking, Golden is discontinuing Quinn Gold and Quinn Burnt Orange acrylics. I guess
Yeah,
it's just
probably same reason they can't get the pigment anymore.
Okay. That I think just answered Nancy Jenkins' question was, why do they stop? Is it too expensive? Are the elemental color parts to make defined paint color disappearing?
You know, it really comes down to who's going to pay the most money. And that's almost always going to be the car industry, followed by industry in general. If you look out your door, you see all those beautiful colors as cars we have. There's always new ones coming out because of us. You know, there's different colors that we end up liking and ones that go away.
Debbie is asking, what is Quinn really? And is it a special mineral?
It's a synthetic 5-ring molecule that was made about, well, it was actually made about 170 years ago, but came to industry about 70 years ago.
Edward is asking, will you be emulating the ones that eventually run out?
We did that with the quinacridone gold, and probably in 17 years, we'll do that with a burnt orange. But it'll be quite some time before that happens.
Okay. So I guess another question about Evelyn says, why I thought you made your own pigments. Well, you have to get.
Yeah, last time I was talking to the chemist, it's about $20 million to make a quinacridone, from inception all the way up. They're very complicated molecules. There's just a lot of steps to them, and they have to be absolutely perfect. Nobody wants a granulating car. So, in every way, they're just perfect. So no, we do our primitex that come from the earth, but we don't do synthetics.
And okay. Then Jane wants to know, what are good substitutes for Quinn Burnt Orange and alizarin crimson?
So we will have alizarin crimson for many, many years to come. a decade, 2 decades to come. And the same thing with the burnt orange. So you don't really have to
No
have
worries.
substitute. You just buy ours. We will have it.
Okay, good.
Those are good questions.
Oh yeah, really. You brought up some really good points there. Okay.
If
Well, thank you.
anybody out there has not used Daniel Smith colors, you're in for a treat if you go out and buy their pigments are just luscious and gorgeous and true and wonderful, and they paint just beautifully. So we love having them as a sponsor, and we love to paint with their products. So buy them if you haven't yet. They're really worth it.
Yeah, thanks, John. Thanks for
You're
the
welcome. Thank you,
Yeah.
Molly. I'm happy
Thank
that
you,
you're
John.
better.
Yeah, I keep muting myself so I can cough off in the background. So excuse me, everybody, but I'll be all right. Okay, I want to introduce Stan Kurth now. What can I say? Interesting character, wonderful artist, amazing teacher. And here's what I can say about Stan. Stan Kurth's description of his creative process goes like this. My definition of intuitive painting is beginning the work without any preliminary thoughts or plans for a particular subject or object or subject as an end, but rather starting on a blank substrate, making marks with a variety of tools, creating a library of design elements and applying design principles until a personal aesthetic is achieved. I do not use any external reference. Stan has drawn and painted most of his life. He lives with a fear not attitude that permeates both his life and his art. He has signature status in several watercolor societies, including National Watercolor Society, San Diego Watercolor Society, and master status in the Western Federation of Watercolor Societies. Stan will be here in Edmonds, Washington next month, as we've said, to teach our first in-studio workshop in 4 years, and he'll also be a host at our International Open Reception on October 28th at Matsky Gallery on Camano Island. Please welcome Stan Kurth. Now, first, before Stan takes the stage, I'm going to share the screen and show you some of his gorgeous work. Oops, there's John first. And if you'd like to see more of Stan's work, you can go to stankurth.com. He has beautiful art on there constantly. Okay, Stan, take it away.
Thank you, Molly. It's been a long 4 years. I mean, I started this process with NWWS 4 years ago. And then I ended up trading with Andy last year because I didn't want to do online. So here I am online. I want to tell everyone this is pre-recorded. I'm not painting this live. So I will be talking over it, and feel free to ask questions or chat through the chat. So I'll get started, and I'll be using some Quinn tonight. I'm going to go over what I'm going to be using in this painting. And first off, I'll be using a matte. I use a lot matte. It helps me compose. It separates what's in the background from the painting. And I'll be painting on a fluid 16 by 16 inch watercolor pad. And then this Cheap Joe's palette is just the cover of the Cheap Joe's palette, because I'm not going to be doing using a whole lot of color, and I'll be mixing in these two trays. So I'm using a limited amount of color here, pigment. The only gouache that I'll be using is this titanium white gouache, and I'll be using this autumn orange, whatever that is, quinacridone crimson lake, permanent yellow, which is my favorite yellow. Any brand doesn't matter. I like warm yellows, and cobalt turquoise. A very little bit of that, but then this is a chalk writer. I'm not sure what it's made of, or what it's kind of viscous, so it doesn't seem like chalk, but it's made by Craft Decor. And I'll be using a wax stick, resist stick, a little chunk of it here, this Precise V5 rollerball ink pen, an Eagle Prismacolor silver pencil, crayon, which you won't see too much of in the end product, and this art graph. And these are the brushes that I'll be using. I'll be using this scraper that I got at Home Depot, alcohol and salt, 2 watercolor brushes, and a couple of bristle brushes and some water. And that's pretty much it for the, and then I'll
Stan, do you prefer the cold press or hot press?
cold press. I've been using cold press for a number of years, decades, as a matter of fact. So this is how I start most everything I do. Whatever substrate I'm working on, whatever mediums, collage, mixed mediums, I start pretty much the same way, by not knowing what I'm doing and just making marks. I use this ink pen a lot. I have, because I use it in my sketchbook, so I have a lot of them. It's just a good way for me to start, and I like the lines that it makes, and it's fairly water soluble, so I can if you look at my website and look at some of the older drawings, you'll see that I use this almost like, it looks almost like charcoal in the end result. The way I start is nothing in mind. I'm making arbitrary marks. The movement, I mean, I have to think about something when I'm drawing, and occasionally I'll start something just through the thought process, and I'll make that shape, and it'll deviate and it'll go somewhere else. And I'm just making arbitrary marks. And what I'm doing is I'm building what I like to call a library of elements. And we all know what elements are. If you don't, I suggest you learn what they are, because that's elements and principles of design are the most important thing in painting. No exceptions. They are the most important things in painting, and they exist in all paintings. So what I'm trying to get down is a variety of elements in this library that I want to call it. So I use for this demonstration, which is only an hour long, I'm using a limited amount of tools and mark making tools. So, but I do use more, but for the sake of demoing, it's pretty easy to use just a limited amount. This is that wax resist stick. And this is fun because later on, when it resists, you go, oh, I forgot I made that mark. You'll see what I'm talking about here shortly when I start getting into color. And here's the crayon, and I didn't use very much of it, but in fact, I didn't use it bold enough to even resist much. You'll see what happens here later, but
a lot of what I do in the beginning gets buried, and that's okay, because towards the end of my process, I become more of a negative painter. This is that silver Prismacolor pencil. Some of that will stay in there. I'm just filling up the page with marks, and you know, a lot of times in my workshops, students will, you know, tend to start composing the piece too early, and without, I like to get a little more feel for what I'm doing and just fill up the page with my marks. And everyone has their own way of making marks, so that's why this becomes fairly unique to each individual artist.
What weight of paper are you using, and you don't have it taped down or tacked down?
Well, it's a watercolor block, but it's coming apart.
Oh.
But it's 140 pound, and I don't tape it. I used, you know, at one time, and I haven't always painted this way. This kind of developed for me. I used to be more of a planner and value studies and thumbnails and all that stuff, and worked from photographs a lot. But it's changed. I used to stretch paper, and it was drum tight. It even sounded like a drum, because I used canvas stretcher bars to stretch paper on. I would throw the paper in the bathtub, let it soak for a while, scribble a little of the sizing off, and then stretch it and staple it just like a wood canvas. But you know, that was too much work. I don't need to do that. And you know, I can flatten a painting out if it gets too wavy or curled up. You know, you can spray the back and weight it down with felts and whatnot.
Are you using both of your hands in your drawing and composition, your left and your right?
No, but I do that occasionally. I'll use my left hand just to get something more arbitrary and you know, awkward looking, whatever, childlike. I don't know. It just frees you up some more. Holding your the paintbrush or the tool, whatever, away from with two fingers and extending your arm, or I've done all that, and it helps. It helps me with the direction I want to go, the feeling I want to obtain in a painting. But in the beginning, like I said, these marks are arbitrary, and who knows what's going to show up. I don't know at this point what it's going to be. I have no idea.
And Terry is asking, why fluid over arches?
It's square.
Oh.
Arch doesn't make a 16 by 16. I like to paint on squares, and Arch doesn't do it.
Oh.
They do. I think they have a couple smaller squares, but I've never seen one bigger than 12 by 12. You know, there's a lot of good paper out there. This is good enough for me. You know, you talk about archival permanent. That's not something I worry a lot about. This is not cheap paper. I mean, it's acid free. I mean, Jackson Pollock used newsprint.
Oh.
So, you know, I really don't care how long it lasts. I sell them cheap enough. I mean, people buy a bottle of wine for more than what I charge for a painting. And that's gone in a hurry. So this is that quinacridone Crimson Lake. I'm not a conventional watercolor artist, so
Hmm.
you got to remember, I don't have a pristine palette. I mean, this is a palette that I obtained when I did a workshop last month in Boone, North Carolina for Cheap Joe's because I forgot to bring my palette. And it really doesn't matter because my palette is it's just a muddy mess. And I don't ever clean it. So maybe I'll bring that out there when I come. So, and if you take this workshop, you'll see it. There's a lot of things you're going to learn in the workshop that you're not going to learn from this demo tonight too. So you can see where that resist is taking place. And again, that I'm still creating that library of elements. So now I've got color, value, line, shape, texture happening in a variety of it dispersed along around the whole substrate.
So Sherry is asking, was that charcoal you were smearing around or
That
or
was
pen
art
or-
graph. That was art graph, and
Art
you
graph.
know, I'm not sure it's carbon based, I'm sure, but it acts like charcoal. It smears like charcoal, but it's water soluble.
Mm.
So I'm not. Is charcoal water soluble? I don't think so. So, but it looks like it. So that's good enough for me. This is alcohol. No, yeah, it's alcohol. You can see there's no scientific method for applying it here. I'm just splashing it on. I don't use a spray bottle with alcohol. It's, you know, it doesn't have a natural enough flow and flick and all that stuff. It's, I guess you can spritz it to varying degrees, but I just like to throw it with my fingers. Salts. So this is creating texture. I mean, this is a watercolor technique that I'm pretty sure most watercolorists know. Again, all I'm doing here is creating elements and trying to get a good variety of elements down. And as I've already showed, I'm not using a whole lot of color.
So Dana's saying art graph is water soluble graphite. That's what it is, art graph.
So I still don't know. I don't have any idea what I'm going to be doing to finish this painting. I've got a lot of interesting elements and texture and stuff that I can use later on when I really start getting a feel for what I want to portray in this piece. And it doesn't always work out, but you know, you can always continue working on a piece because wash is opaque.
So Liz is asking, such pink dominance, will that change? Pretty sure. Pretty
Oh
sure it will.
yeah. Oh yeah, that's gonna change. Liz, was that Liz Walker?
It was.
She knows what will happen here. Yeah, it's gonna be a warm painting, but it's not gonna be this pink dominance. Thought about doing a Barbie painting once, but
Oh,
I nixed that idea.
Baby wants to know if you limit your color palette up front or decide as you're painting.
Quite often I decide as I'm painting. But for this one, I kind of, I had an idea in mind, and I think the two, the quinacridone and this, the yellow are the only two that I really started out with, and I added the others. And then of course I could come back and show you what I used in the beginning because I had finished the painting and knew what it was. But most of the time I do it on the run. Yeah, I don't, I'll decide maybe whether I want the painting to be cool or warm, and sometimes the temperature even changes. So like I said, I really don't know what it's going to be. I kind of feel my way through it. And again, my definition of intuitive is just that. I don't know what it's going to be in the end, because I think there's a lot of definitions of intuitive. And one of mine, one of my favorite definitions is that if you do this a lot and you do it and you learn these elements, these principles and how they work together, you don't have to think about them as much when you're painting. And therefore there's second nature or intuitive. I've been doing this for quite a while, so I have kind of a feel for how things what'll happen. And so I can just boldly go and do as I please, making this library of elements, and then tame it down to expose my deviant personality.
Yeah. Jane wants to know, are these watercolor or gouache you're working with now?
This is watercolor right now. I'm only gonna use, when I use the gouache, I'm going to mix it with colors that I've already used. So that way that the opacity layers that will come down will be unified with the color already, because I'm using those colors to mix the gray. You'll see that as it comes along, but this is all transparent right now. These are Mission watercolors that I'm using right here. That's a Korean company, and I really didn't know anything about these pigments until I won an award and got a whole bunch of these, and I kind of like the colors. They mix well, and they've done pretty well. I mean, I could probably stop right now and say, oh, here it is, man, here's my intuitive painting, but that's not me. It's not, there's too much going on. And I mean, I don't want it to, I want it to be more, and I don't want to say representational, but representational of me, you know, of who I am and what I want to say. And I'm not sure what that is. I let the painting speak in the end.
So Penny is asking, why is it so hard for classically trained painters to transition into non-planning intuitive work?
I think the question answers itself. You know, having done it both ways, I mean, I used to meticulously render realistic paintings, and they weren't expressive enough for me. I mean, the motion, and you know, you've always heard this, loosen up in your watercolors and do this, and I think it's hard to it's harder to compose on the fly and maintain that content that you want to portray. I mean, I think that's just my opinion, my idea of why it may be hard for a more classical painter to transition. It takes a little time. I know John Salmonen paints in a different way sometimes, and they're fantastic. but they're not the same as, you know, his more classical style.
So Debbie is asking again, could you repeat those pigments?
Yeah, the quinacridone, well, the orange is autumn orange, and that's a mission color, and I'm not sure what autumn orange is, but it's kind of cool looking. Quinacridone, Crimson Lake, and this is the yellow is whatever, deep. It's a very warm yellow, and then what I haven't used yet is cobalt turquoise.
So Lisa wants to know, do you ever abandon a painting halfway through if you don't feel it's working or simply make more adjustments?
No,
Yeah.
not really. I mean, sometimes they'll end up being very minimalist looking, but no, I have a saying, you know, I can wreck a painting and I can rectify it. So
Okay.
I think you get to a certain point. I mean, I've done some acrylic paintings that there's so many layers on them that's they've actually gained a bunch of weight.
Oh. So Jane is asking if that's your usual process, marks, then watercolor, then gouache?
No, if there's no, I
There's no
experiment all
normal.
the time. I change things up quite often, but this is an easy way for me to demo and show my process. I do usually start out making marks, but it's not watercolor necessarily for color all the time. When I work in acrylic, obviously it can't be, but I do mix the two.
Mhm. So Liz is asking if you mostly work from a limited palette.
I
And
have
do you-
been lately, but I do use extensive palettes, but when I do that, when I use more color, I don't, I tend not to incorporate it all. In other words, I only use little black. Yes, to answer that question, I'm mostly using a limited palette now. So in this one, there's what, 4 colors? There will be 4 colors. I haven't used any of that cobalt turquoise yet. That's coming up. And I will use a lot of that cobalt turquoise to make the gray that I'm going to make.
Anne is asking, what kind of quote unquote alcohol do you sprinkle on the artwork?
It varies. Isopropyl in various percentages.
Oh,
And I found that it really doesn't make much difference if it's 90 or 50 or, 30 or whatever.
so the colors that you won as a prize were those mission colors? Mission.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Jane is asking why alcohol
Texture.
texture.
It makes some really cool looking blooms and blossoms. I think they're called in the watercolor world. Maybe. I think blooms happen with water, but I mean, alcohol makes very cool texture. I think, well, you can still, some of it's gone now, but like I said, a lot of what I do gets buried.
Yeah.
It's hard to see now where that alcohol actually was, but you could see it very well in the beginning. I think I might fling some more down here, but we'll see. Yeah, here's some more alcohol. Now, Jane, see what it's doing? It's moving the pigment around.
So Kevin is asking, at this point, can you see the very fine lines you started with? Are you
Some-
using them as a reference lines? And
Well, number one, sometimes I do that, sometimes I don't. There's various ways that if you take this workshop, you're going to find out a lot of different ways that I do this. But I don't want to see them all. The
Yeah.
object is some of these that have to go, you know?
yeah, because there were a
and
lot of lines. Yeah.
yeah, you saw how many I did.
Yeah.
So when it gets down to the finished part of it, very few of them show. And that's the selection process that that an artist has to do and work in this way, has to make those decisions, you know. I hate to have some favorite part that I baby along and then it just becomes a menace.
Mm.
You know, so sometimes if I have something that looks really cool, I'll immediately take it out or paint over it. It's all about choices here. But like I said, I want a variety of elements, you know, and variety is contrast. Because contrast is what? It's a difference. So when you have one or more than one color, you have contrast in color because you have two different colors. So I'm looking for that contrast overall. Not just in value, although that is very important. But the way this looks right now, you see what the finished product looks like. It doesn't, it's nothing like this. I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one that paints this way. I mean, I've taught a lot of workshops and I think others do too, but I don't know what I'm doing right there. Cleaning.
Just a little housework.
What's that?
Just a little housework, cleaning.
Yeah. Well, I didn't want to turn the camera off. So yeah, I'm getting a lot of money from Cheap Joe's for doing this. Not really.
Not really.
I just was fortunate that, you know, Megan gave me that
Yeah.
that palette because I forgot mine. And not that I really need one, but I like to carry it around and show everyone how dirty it is and how I'm not a watercolor purist. This is the cobalt turquoise. Which surprisingly, you know, it's a good glazing color for me. I like it. It produces so many different colors when you use it. And I didn't let what was there dry well enough, I don't think, when I started glazing with it, but that's okay. I just wanted a little bit of it in there anyway. You'll see what I'm talking about. So, see, I'm trying to get this dry here because I know that I'm going to be attempting to glaze with that.
So drying, but not with a dryer.
You mean a hair dryer?
Right.
Yeah, the noise irritates me.
Yeah.
You know, I have 5 daughters and a wife, and I don't know. I got to the point where hair dryers were really annoying.
Oh my gosh.
So why would I add to that? I just don't need it. I don't think most of the time I don't need to paint that quick. When you work with acrylic, I don't want it to dry fast. And,
Oh yeah.
So I do all right without a hair dryer.
So Liz is saying, yes, Stan, I think there are several painters who have been influenced by your intuitive method of painting. It's liberating.
Yeah. I mean, but there's a difference. I mean, you know, monkeys and elephants do paintings that I've seen videos of.
Ah, eh,
And but this is a little bit different because the monkeys and the elephants, you know, can't
thinking.
finish the painting. They can only fling it. And even Jackson Pollock had, you know, good design in his work. So there's something to you see, I just didn't clean my brush well enough because you see the yellow
Oh.
in the.
Yeah. So
That's all right.
your paper once again, is it craft decor cold press fluid block?
What?
Your paper that you're painting with.
It's a fluid 140
Okay.
pound 16 by 16 inch block.
Okay, thank you.
The chalk writer is craft decor, I think.
Okay, gotcha.
Now, if I had mixed this up, if I had cleaned my brush or used a fresh brush instead of that one with the yellow pigment in it, this would have glazed a lot better and had much better color properties. But it doesn't matter because the thing about gouache is the colors are so well unified when you start mixing the gouache in to the watercolor. Again, you'll see what I'm talking about, I think. Hopefully. So now I'm not glazing, I'm mixing it. And that's okay too. This basically, what was that question someone asked when I make a mistake and or get through the painting and do I quit or whatever? I'm constantly making mistakes. I'm you know, I'm doing things that are, you know, against the law here. And it doesn't bother me, you know, because I know that I'm going to work around that, whatever that thing I did that I didn't really want to do. And of course, I didn't want to start the demo over. Didn't want to do 50 demos. So, but there's a lot of things I see that, yeah, you know, there's a poet laureate. I think his name was Billy Owens. Does anyone know who he is? He wrote some very fascinating poems, kind of in the Robert Frost vein of, you know, two paths you can go by. But you know, each painting's uncharted water for me.
Celine Ryan is asking, do you think in terms of saving white space too?
I do. I still do that. I mean, I think that's left over from my watercolor days. And the reason for that is I want a full range of value. So the white is going to be the lightest part of your painting. So I'm getting a pretty good library of elements here. And at some point, I decide, well, now let me do something with all these elements. Let me start making sense out of what I've got down here, taming it down. So that's when myself or anyone who paints in this manner will expose themselves as, you know, painters. They're the choices you make at this point, you know. How do you feel your way through this?
Liz wants to know, if you paint to the edge of the painting, don't you cut off the edges when you mat it, or do you float?
I don't
Float mat.
float. I don't
No?
float unless I float monoprints, because they have all that nice white paper on the outside of the painting and the deckled edges. But I don't worry about cropping into the painting a quarter of an inch. I mean, an eighth of an inch or a quarter of an inch. I will cut a mat with a 15 by 15 inch opening for these.
Oh.
And you're going to see here in a minute when I start putting the mat down so I can start composing this thing and arranging these elements the way I want, what a difference that makes
Oh,
to put the mat down. But I don't mind cropping into it. I mean, it never bothers me. I mean, I'm not losing that much, but I do want to have that ability to crop into it. So I paint all the way out to the edge.
so Tanya's asking, what changes do you make in a square format composition versus a rectangle?
I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question. I see changes that I need to make changes. I have struggled with rectangles. And for me, a lot of times I'm looking constantly at turning this square thing around. I don't really on this one, but I do that quite often. With a rectangle, I mean, you pretty much have to decide at some point that it's going to be a landscape or a portrait. I mean, it's going to be horizontally oriented or vertically oriented.
Right.
But that's not true with a square. So to me, the compositional possibilities are far outweigh those of a rectangle. That's just for me. I like squares. I mean, I have for quite some time.
It looks like we're getting into gouache now, huh?
Yes, we are. So I'm adding gouache in here. I'm making a gray, and I'm using that the turquoise, the cobalt turquoise, and that quinacridone crimson lake. And the crimson lake is very dominant, so I have to keep cooling it down. Because I want a more neutral gray. It's still warm. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's still warm. Oh, better put some more in there. And this is the hardest part of the way I paint. What's coming up here, using the opaque gouache, because now I have to start thinking about what I want to take out, what I want to keep, and where I want to go with it. Sometimes I just go for it. And you notice I'm using a 2-inch brush.
Yeah.
So it gives me less control and more of a, you know, a painterly feel to what's going on. And again, I don't block out large areas. I leave little specks here and there, and I'll scratch back into it because I can always go over them, but it's hard to get that original transparent watercolor look back once I've gone over it. In fact, it's impossible. Because when the gouache dries, I mean, it's already, some of it is seeped in and mixed with the watercolor. And it's not a separate layer. And when you try to take it off, you're never going to retain or get back that original. So this is when I start using the mat. You can see what a difference it makes to put the mat down. And I've been using this mat to paint for quite a while. I mean, not that particular mat, but I've been using mats when I paint. When I'm painting on large canvases, they're already isolated enough on the wall that I don't need to worry about, you know, isolating that background behind it. Plus, it's how that, in this case, it's how the painting will eventually look anyway, because I mat and glaze my paintings as it. They're under glass. I don't. Molly brought something up about do I varnish my paintings, you know, and coat them anyway, and I don't. I just put them under glass. I know there's lots of ways that it can be done, and I have my reasons. So as I'm painting negatively here, I have to make decisions, you know, that are kind of lasting. You know, what shapes I want where and how I want them to appear, and so I'm starting to think about the principle and how I usually finish paintings. This is my personal method of doing. There's many ways in using the principles and elements to do that, but the way that I like to do it is with the principle of balance and the elements of shape, value, and color. Color being third, because I do some grayscale paintings too, some black and whites. Again, I'm pretty much using this 2-inch brush exclusively. So I don't, when I use a smaller brush, I start getting too particular about making something look a certain way. And the brush affords me that accidental look. That less contrived feel. Some scruffy looking edges. And of course, this being wash acts the same way as acrylic. When it dries darker than what you see when you put it down. Unlike watercolor, which dries lighter than what you see when you put it down. So you see, I'm taking quite a bit of the stuff that I had down to begin with out.
Yeah.
And I'm composing at the same time. I'm thinking about balance. Richard Diebenkorn is one of my favorite painters. And he actually gave me permission to, you know, reveal the method in which I painted something, and you know, by leaving exposed elements underneath, and not having perfect blended brush strokes and that kind of thing.
Janet is asking, will Stan and Don be at the Florida Watercolor Convention this week?
Don Andrews?
Janet, is asked John, I think John, maybe Ugly.
What now? I won't be there.
You're not going to be there? Okay.
No.
Okay.
I'll be in Buffalo in a couple of weeks with Niagara Frontier Watercolor Society.
Okay. And Jane is asking, at this point in the painting, are you thinking of objects or more just going from non-representational shapes?
No, I am thinking about objects. And they're figurative in nature, but they're pretty obtuse. I don't do any, I don't, if I try to, make something, to me, it'd be hokey if I try to make something anatomically correct or very realistic in this format, in this. So I don't. I just want to give hints of something, It adds a little narrative, doesn't have to be there. I mean, I could leave it, and I really like it when a painting comes out and it's just totally non-representational or non-objective. And that happens occasionally. But if you take this workshop, you'll see that there's different ways that I start, and that can influence the way it finishes as well. But I can't say it all in this one demo.
Yeah.
So you notice how much I'm using the mat, because at this point I'm really having to think about the composition and what's going to finish this.
Penny's asking if you work on several paintings at a time or try to complete one before you move on to the next, or even allow a painting to rest and return at a later date.
That's a good question. I actually do one at a time. However, anything in my studio or in my flat files is subject to change or is not really finished. What finishes paintings for me is if someone buys them.
That's done.
So that will finish it. But I do have a lot of paintings that I want to work on. In fact, I did that today. I worked on some that have been in my flat file for a little while. I had some ideas about what I wanted to do or direction I wanted to go, at least how I wanted to do it, not necessarily the end product. One of them I was satisfied with, one I wasn't, but I do work on multiple paintings, especially when I'm working on acrylic paintings. I do quite a few demos, so those I use, and a lot of times I sell the demos, so they're finished right then and there.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about, how am I going to balance this? So I know it's going to be asymmetrical. It's not going to be a symmetrical balance. So, but I don't want to. I don't want it to be too symmetrical or divided in half. So you'll see what happens here soon. I start taking a lot more out.
Oh.
But I like to rough up edges so they're not all pristine and clean. And you can all see my cursor here, I hope. But this area right here, still bugs me, and I let it dry that way. It's just one of those things, that I could possibly fix later on, but I won't. It dries back somewhat, but it still bothered me.
Yeah.
And I'm not done yet. It's still going. Probably see I'm gonna take more out down there.
Mhm.
I use my hands to help me compose and see what it looks like without, because there's a lot going on in that area. Color, texture, line, values. My brush was really wet. Plus I wet the pigment down, the gray. So it's picking up the colors underneath, you can see how it's picking up that
Oh, yeah.
yellow a lot. Which is okay. It offers variety to that gray tone. I'm gonna let my dog out. I'll be back in a second. Okay, I'm back. That's my fingernail.
Yeah. So Jill says, so is your ultimate motive in a painting removing more than adding?
I
So it
paint
seems-
negatively. This demonstration is predominantly putting down all what I described earlier as an element of a library of elements, and then painting negatively to make some sort of sense out of those elements. But I couldn't have painted these objects, positively. They could only have
Okay.
been done negatively. But that's not the only way I work. It is right here. I'm using a negative painting method. But that's kind of the way I've been working right now. I mean, painting negatively. I think Linda Kemp was a big influence on me.
David Anselm wants to know why you don't have a doggy door.
Why I don't have a what?
Doggy door.
Because it's not my house. And I don't want other animals coming in.
Oh, look at that.
So David Anselm won an award in last year's international show.
Mm.
I think he did. Pretty sure he did.
Yeah. Membership award. You won the membership award for our
Mhm.
open, yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to being up there, that's for sure. And it is, it's so true. It's so much better to see these paintings in person.
Yes.
There's no one's monitor in the world is calibrated the same. So who knows what color you're seeing? You know, and even in a gallery on different days and different light, paintings may look different, but the lighting inside the gallery is usually compensates for that. The lighting should be really good in a gallery. So it's almost finished. I'm kind of happy with the balance now. So, but I need to do a few things. And this is that chalk writer, which is very viscous, but that paint down there is still kind of wet, so it's not working real well. You can see I'm going to use it a little bit later here, up higher where the paint is drier, and you'll see that it works a little. It's more opaque. And that didn't work at all.
No.
So that's why I didn't show that as one of the materials that I used. And it's too wet. That was a white colored pencil. I think, or it was a charcoal pencil, I think, a white charcoal pencil.
Mary wants to know if you listen to music while you paint.
Sometimes I listen to weird music.
Oh,
I mean, I say weird. It's kind of I don't know. I don't want to say spacey, but it makes me. It doesn't force any lyrics on me, if you know what I mean.
oh yeah.
I don't particularly care. The kind of music I listen to is absent of lyrics. I'll read poetry if I need lyrics.
Yeah.
One of my favorite poems is by Robert Hayden, who was the first Black poet laureate. And the name of that poem is Those Winter Sundays. It's one of my favorite poems. So what I'm looking for right now, and I'm still looking for a way to tie this together. I mean, balance-wise, there's kind of a division right here that I don't particularly care for. So these are the kind of things I do when I'm finishing a painting. I will put little accents on, whether they're light or dark. I will continue lines or extend lines, or create something that's already halfway implied, or maybe a little bit implied. So I'm not going to do that whole line, but I wanted to give a little emphasis to it. So, and this is just the texture emphasis. So when I give these little white dots a drop shadow, it makes them more 3D and implied 3D texture.
David is asking, is a figurative impression important?
Is
Or
what important?
a figurative impression important or frequently apparent in your composition?
There's all kinds of things that show up in my compositions, you know, from sort of figurative, you know, weird animals,
Yeah.
it- old cars, car parts, you know, body parts.
Lindsay's
I-
asking, do you know, or Lindy is asking, do you know, is fluid watercolor block made with cellulose or 100% cotton?
You know, I don't know, and I don't
Oh,
really,
okay.
I don't, I don't care. I think it's, I'm pretty dang sure for the price, it's not cotton.
Okay.
That's for sure. Cotton lintels are expensive. So right now, here's that part I was telling you about where I wanted to tie the two sections of the painting together. So I'm sort of doing that, you know, with a little white string here, connecting rope, whatever it is. You know, I think that's what was going through my mind when I wanted to connect one half of the painting to the other more efficiently. And I'm also going to bring that little black thin line that's above that down more too. You'll see that here in a minute. And you can see when I applied that, how much more opaque it was than what it's doing right here where that pigment is still wet.
So is that a chalk marker you're using, or?
It says someone in Florida gave me 3 of them. And I have no idea what it is. I'm not a big art supply guy. It's a craft decor chalk writer is what it's called. But when you actually feel it, it's kind of viscous, and I don't know much chalk that has a viscous feel to it. Maybe I'm out of the loop in art supplies, but chalk to me was always kind of dry, and you know, this I think if you use it on a chalkboard, it'd leave a stain. I don't know. That's just what it's called, and it looks like chalk when you put it down, but it has a viscous feel to it. You know, if I didn't have any art supplies, I'd make my own. That's how I feel about it. So I don't go out and buy the latest, craziest, newest stuff, you know. I pretty much get by with limited amounts of art supplies, which is good for the wallet because what I do buy costs a lot.
So Jill and Gary are both asking, is it like oil pastel?
The chalk writer?
Yeah.
Yeah, it has that feel to it, that viscous feel. And I used to use oil pastels, but I found that when they don't ever dry. And
Oh,
you know,
right.
it causes me a lot of problems later on when I'm trying to do things over them. And they resist, and then they peel up, and they're not dry, you know, and you put something on top of it which is trying to dry and they're not, so you have this conflict.
Oh.
So I try not to mix any kind of oil with water. Wax is okay, and it doesn't mix either. And there's a good shot of my head.
Jane is saying, I think the chalk marker is what people use to write on chalkboards, menus, street signs, etc. They're partially paint, partially chalk. Could be.
Yeah, again, I don't know.
Susan is saying that fluid watercolor paper is 100% cotton paper manufactured by the Handbook Paper Company. The cotton version is called Fluid 100.
I don't think this is the cotton version. Yeah, these watercolor blocks are not that much. I mean, I think they're like $30 around that neighborhood. If they were cotton, they would be more than that, I would think.
How many sheets? How many sheets in a block?
15.
Yeah. So Kevin is saying compositionally, I don't understand why you covered over the lower half with the gray and green.
I don't know, Kevin. Compositionally, it was my choice.
Okay.
You know, I do that a lot. I mean, it's not totally covered. There's little specks here and there, so there is some interest. It's not just nothing. There's lines coming down that anchor these parts of the image. See, so this vertical lines hold this ambiguous structure up here. You know, composition. You know, what is good? I think that's why I still enter these competitions to see what my peers think. You know, what other jurors think. And I don't know that I need that confirmation anymore, but it's still fun and it helps me. It helps my network, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Because I'm making a living at this and it's not easy.
Yeah.
So this is the finished painting, and I have another view of it here, which I will show you here in just a second.
Oh. Oh, well, that's different. Yeah.
So
The lighting is different. Yeah.
well, yeah, this was taken with different light source on it. The other one, this has more light on it, so you're actually seeing more of the color.
Wow, beautiful. Celine is saying, do you ever rinse away areas? And I'm pretty sure the answer is yes.
What was the question?
Do you ever rinse away areas?
Rinse?
Rinse.
Like hold it under the faucet type of
Oh,
rinse?
I don't know if she meant that. I meant, put some water on it, rinse it away. I don't know. I don't know what she was
You know, I do a lot of crazy stuff, you know.
Yeah,
In my collage paintings, I do all kinds of, I put grass in them and dirt and sand and mix it with gesso and whatnot.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I like dirt, so, but
Yeah.
rinsing, I think I've done that. I mean, I know I did a painting not too long ago and it won an award in San Diego Watercolor Society show that I had done a lot of, I don't know if I call it rinsing, but I kind of scrubbed it when it was wet,
Oh, yeah.
certain areas. So I've done that.
So Terry is asking now, and let's finish. What elements of design do you see in it? What comes out to you? Can you explain the elements you see in this composition?
Elements of design are simply line, shape, value, color, texture. So yeah, you see that all over the place. If you're talking about principles of design, that's a different thing. So how is this painting unified? So let's take color. How is the color unified? Because I'm using a very limited palette, I mixed the gray with the colors that I used in here. So these colors are pretty much unified because there's some of each element, each color element in each one, in each mixture.
Mhm.
So you get some of this, the red that was in here and the yellow that was in here, down here especially, and in the gray you're getting this little bit of turquoise, cobalt turquoise you see here and there to make this. So that's one thing. So what is there contrast in elements? Contrast being a principle? I think so. Contrast is different, you know. Contrast can be defined as the antithesis of simile. Okay, when two things are not similar, they have contrast. So yes, there's contrast in color. There's two different colors. There's three different colors. There's contrast in value because there's a full range of value from light to dark.
Mhm.
That's a principle in here. You know, principles and elements exist in every painting. It's how you use them. And this, you know, this is my personal feeling on it. I am always looking for that gold ring that I'm reaching for, that I'm never going to achieve, but I know it's out there. There's an aesthetic that I'm drawn to, that I feel, and it changes. It's changed throughout my life. I mean, there was a time in my life when I thought the abstract expressionists were, oh, those guys can't paint. That's
Oh.
not painting. But it is. So it changes, but there's this aesthetic that I'm striving for, that I can see. It's not clear, it's a vision. I know it when I see it. It's why I like the certain paintings that I do. I see it in realistic paintings, I see it in abstract paintings, you know.
Yeah.
Andrew Wyeth has that aesthetic that I ascribe to. And then again, totally abstract painters do. Mark Rothko. I'm just saying, there's no set. Everyone has their own aesthetic, and they have their own feelings about paintings and what makes them good and what they like and don't like. And when it boils right down to it, there's only two criticisms you can give to any painting. Really, only two. You like it or you don't.
Oh.
So, you know, I'm in several critique groups and I get a little bit disgusted sometimes with the comments.
Oh.
You know, it's like my critiques are more in a positive vein. I like to point out what is good about a painting and how, and it's all subjective, you know. So I don't have to be negative if I choose not to be. But I don't. There's certain comments in a painting, you know. I'll hear a critiquer say, "Well, I'd like to see." Well, you know, who gives a dang what you'd like to see? You know, it's this person's painting. And at some point in time, you got to quit going to critiques. You got to start understanding that you're looking for a personal aesthetic that you want, that you like. And when you see it and you know it, hey, it's a good feeling. You like it or you don't. I don't necessarily like this painting. There's some qualities I like about it. There are others that I've done that I like better than this one, of course. But this was a demo I had to do, and I did it. So, and I'm not displeased with it. There's certain things I don't like about it. And part of it is this stuff like this. Yeah, there's some other things. I think this bothers me. I want to this should be more straight right here. And perhaps a little more emphasis, like a line like this, something come down this way, to a little more balance in the bottom part, compositionally speaking. But again, I'm not going to fix this one. I'm leaving it like it is. So if it hasn't disappeared before I get there, I will bring it with me.
Okay. It's wonderful.
I think
There's
it's a beautiful painting, Stan.
it's a
What's
slew
that?
of many comments about, what an accomplished artist. Love this demo. Merci, a rebel in art philosophy. It was great comments, and we really appreciate this.
Yeah, and I appreciate those comments. It's like, it's really, everyone has a feel about a painting that they either like or don't. And the thing about saying, well, I don't like that painting. Okay, so why don't you like it? It doesn't matter. This is subjective what we do. And, sometimes, there's a lot of very, very successful painters that I don't particularly care for their paintings, but I think everyone's that way. I think if you're not that way, then, you can't like everything, really.
Yeah. So a lot of people looking forward to the workshop with you.
Well, yeah, I'm looking forward to doing that workshop. There's a lot of different things that I'm going to talk about in that workshop that I didn't talk about here tonight.
Yeah.
For sure. And they all have to do, and the most important thing to me in painting are those elements and principles and how you use them. And if you're aware of them, you can use them more effectively in my estimation. And I think the best way to be aware of them is to do it all the time. Just whenever you can, keep painting. I started painting when I was 4 years old.
Oh.
And I had ups and downs, with trying to figure out whether or not painting was a viable thing to do for a living. But I figured it out. If you're dedicated to it, then you will get good at it. You will be pleased with it. You'll be happy doing it. And that's what I've come to, is I'm happy doing it now.
Yeah.
There were many frustrating days when I wanted to paint like everyone else and not myself. So
I think that's great advice to end up on, Stan. Thank you very much. It's getting kind of late on the East Coast for folks, and this was a wonderful demo. I love it when our demo artists inspire us to want to go into our studios at midnight and go paint, which, this one makes me feel like I want to do. So Stan, if you could stop sharing your screen, I need to share mine.
Will do.
All right. All right. Great demo, Stan. Thank you so much. Makes me so excited to be taking your workshop. I'm so glad I signed up for it. So everybody, there's still some spots left. So if you were attracted to the sense of freedom that came with watching Stan paint tonight, this workshop is for you. I think it's going to be wonderful. So I'm going to share my screen one more time. And again, as always, we really want to thank our sponsors and the people who support this organization that allows us to do what we do here. We work so hard to bring educational experiences and help our members grow as artists and give them platforms and galleries to show their art in and all kinds of things. And we couldn't do it without any of these wonderful companies who have supported us for such a long time, especially Daniel Smith. So please patronize these sponsors so that they can keep on helping artists grow in the world, which is what they do. So, and we have a wonderful event next month. Herman Pekel from Australia is going to be our demo artist next month. And he is one of the three amigos. If you have not seen them on YouTube. It's Herman Pico, Joseph Zabukvik, and Alvaro Castanet. And they have a video on YouTube where they went and painted a single painting, the three of them together. And it is so much fun. If you haven't watched it, do. And Herman is a fabulous artist, and he's going to be here next month on October 24th at our general meeting, which again will start at 7 o'clock. So sign up for that soon. And I think that's it. Does anybody else have anything to share? Any more panelists? Debbie, anything else you'd like to say to everybody?
No, I would just like to tell everyone that just to remind them that the international our international workshops international with George Politis, that is available for registration now. And you can also sign up for the October meeting with Herman. You can get that, you can get registered for that right now. And otherwise, Stan, it was a fabulous September. You kicked it off for us just right. So thank you for being here, and
You're welcome.
everybody else, thank you for being here.
Yes. Yes, everybody, thank you so much. We always have such fun, and we love it when you join us. So thank you, Stan, and I will see you next month. Good night,
Yeah, looking
everybody.
forward to it.
Good night.
Good night.